My name is Max Godfrey Semkaya, creator on Real Turn Projects, a YouTube channel that is aimed at promoting Ugandan tennis, creating memories for our players in Uganda. This is my tennis story. Back in 2017, I was seated amongst my fellow colleagues at work, and we're discussing what we are going to do in future when we are out of employment. On that table, I realized that I was interested in investing in sports and entertainment. However, sports in Uganda is at its lowest. Almost every sport is struggling. Government alone cannot meet the demands and requirements of the participants. So at that moment, I looked around for a sport that was of interest, that would be fun as I'm growing up. Maybe it would be fun for my little girl. I have a dream for my little daughter that one day she's going to come out and I have to give her a sport in which to participate. Something I would pass over to my children in future, a sport that will take away their minds. As a young man, I played in a number of sports. One night, I'm at home and I was assessing myself on all the games I'd ever participated in. I'd played football, volleyball, I'd played netball with the ladies, amateur basketball. I used to run, athletics, badminton. But there's this one sport I remembered at college. There was a guy who was rich, and for him every weekend he would be allowed to get out of school and go and play, then come back. But he would carry a bag, Wilson. So one time I asked my friends, but where does this guy always go? And they told me this guy was playing tennis. He was always allowed to go out of school to go to a tennis club and play. And I used to admire him a lot, but I couldn't reach him. He was bigger than me, he was wealthier than me, he knew more English than I knew at the time. That night, I made a decision that I was taking on lawn tennis as the sport to invest in future. I looked at lawn tennis in Uganda. There are very few players in the country. Actually, it is like a dead sport. After deciding to take on lawn tennis, the question was, do you know how to play it? Where is it played? In Uganda, there are not so many courts. I didn't know how it is played, but I used to watch it a lot. I used to watch Serena play, Andy Murray, Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Kaba, and I was inspired. It's a sport I used to support on screen, and I loved the same to be in my country at one point. Here came the challenge. I didn't know what it took to play tennis. I didn't know how they play tennis. I didn't know where they play tennis in Uganda. And I started asking around people if they knew tennis, and majority of the people actually in Uganda don't understand tennis. They don't know what tennis is. Then I met one gentleman who surprised me and sent me to Google Tennis Club, where I went, and for the first time, I saw playing fields, I saw courts, I saw people with rackets, I saw people enjoy, young ones, I saw some expatriates, foreigners play. Then I saw our local people, elderly, play, and I was inspired. On that same day, I inquired about the cost of a racket, the cost of a net, and the balls. And this one gentleman, I think he was a service person, told me encouraged me and said, this is a very good sport if you want to invest in it. It's a very good sport if you want to participate in it. And the racket, if you want, I'll give you a racket at 100,000 and 20 balls at 50,000. 100,000 is like approximately $30, and 20 used balls at about $15. I was excited, and that was a good moment for me. When I inquired about the fees, if I wanted to play, are the fields open to everyone? Are the fields open to someone? And that's when I got the shock. This gentleman told me, you have to pay 20,000 for 1 hour. That's roughly $11, $11 to play for 1 hour. Surely I could not afford that. So I went home that day, picked my little savings that I had, went back to Gogo Tennis Club the next day and secured 2 rackets and 20 balls. I still have those rackets. These were the rackets that I bought. These were my first rackets. For many of you in today's world, very few can use these rackets. As you can see, this one is called New Rocky, a brand. I don't know whether the brand still produces rackets, but this was my first racket. And this one is Dunlop. It's a Dunlop racket. I bought them way back. In today's world, these are brands. I don't know whether people are no longer passionate about the brands, but people talk about Baborat, Wilson, and I started with New Rocky. So that day I paid for these rackets and my 20 balls. Next thing was to look around Kampala and find where I could play tennis. There are not so many courts in town to play tennis. Most of the courts are on hotels or recreation centers. We don't have community courts in Uganda. We don't have free courts in Uganda. We have actually very few usable active courts in Kampala. So I had to find a way of learning tennis. And behind me here is my first journey to learning tennis. This is a wall. I went to Kyambogo University. In this field, it's a cricket oval field, and I met these 2 walls. Behind me is one of the walls I used to practice, to start off my first training of tennis. I had a small rope that I would tie on this wall and start hitting my balls on the wall, ensuring that all the balls I would hit were above that string. Around April 2017. Then later on, I discovered another wall within the same university. And this wall would give me peace. I would find myself practicing there. I had to make sure that if I practiced on this wall where it was, if you can look at it clearly, there are glasses above that wall. There are glasses above that wall. So I would do my best to keep all the balls low so that I don't break any of those glasses. Otherwise I would pay. So I practice on that wall to be consistent so that my balls don't go overboard, my balls would not fly. And I think that wall helped me to control my ball a bit down, closer to the net. Around November 2017, I asked around for some tennis clubs in Uganda. I went on internet, tried to look for some, and there were not many. I remember finding Tennis for All and Royal Tennis Club. Tennis for All was all about children. It was nurturing and training the youth, the young ones, to learn tennis. While Royal Tennis Club, that was operating in Nambole, was serving both the adults and the children. I chose to go to Royal Tennis Club. When I reached that club, there's a lady called Cynthia Tayebwa. I asked whether at my age I would get training, and was it possible for me to learn tennis at my age. Guess what? The lady was so excited to see me because the club itself was struggling. There were no players coming through. They were looking for sponsorship. They were looking for money to pay their rent. And this lady said, anybody can play tennis for as long as you have the interest and you're committed to the sport. I was touched by that lady, and I will always remember those words. Unlike some people who discourage talent, this lady was there to encourage my talent. She didn't look at me as this big guy who is interested in tennis and has no future in tennis. All she would say and all she had in mind was, tennis is a very good sport. You will enjoy it. You will love it. Cynthia, wherever you are, I want to thank you for that. You guys will forgive me. I think as I continue, it may get so emotional, but I'll try to keep it together. I asked this lady how much I needed to play in order to be trained. And this lady told me to pay 10,000 court fee because the club pays Nambole management, Nambole stadium management, and you pay me 10,000 as coaching fee. I looked at the offer and I said, okay, I can sacrifice part of my salary and have this training done. So 2017 is when I started training with this lady. But the first day I started training with her, she discovered I knew how to just hit balls. I didn't even know how to name the grips of a racket. I didn't know what was forehand. I didn't know what was a smash. Knew nothing. All I knew was hit the balls on the wall as long as they're above a net. That's the best thing I knew about tennis. But this lady told me to forget everything I'd learned, remove it from my head, and go back to the basics. She brought me red balls, very weak balls. I almost got annoyed, but she told me that was the foundation. She gave me basic drills, ready position, taught me forehand, backhand. It didn't come easy. Up to now, I'm still training forehand, backhand. But she gave me all the basics I needed. Now came a challenge. I was working in a bank at a junior level and would leave the bank quite late on weekdays. So I could only afford to come for training on Sundays and on public holidays. And if we all know, these are not so many days for you to progress very well in tennis. So one day, we were training with Cynthia, and she brought in a young man to help play with me, the big guy. Small young man who was energetic, passionate about tennis. He was also struggling, not so good at the time, but he was better than me, much more better than me. This young man was called Joel Musuki. Joel Musuki is now working with Serving Up Hope. He's my best friend in Uganda, and I'm proud to know Joel. I'm proud to be one of his mentors after we met. But how do I get to know Joel? That day we had a discussion where he told me his troubles. He couldn't find fees. The home was struggling. He could not have lunch. And he loved playing tennis as escaping sport. When things are hard, you find a sport, you find refuge that takes away the stress. That's how this friend of mine sounded. He was miserable. He was not having fun. But he had the passion to play tennis, and I remember he told me he wanted to become #1 in Uganda. Here I was, I had no talent, I had no basic skills, but I wanted to train. So together we became friends, and we started hanging out most of the weekends, most of the Sundays, trying to learn. He would teach me forehand and those basic strokes of tennis. But when I met Joel and Cynthia, my coach, this is a female. It is a she. She would always encourage me to be on court. She always believed in me. She never looked at me because of my age. She never segregated, and she sacrificed most of those holidays, most of her Sundays, to come to the field and teach me 1 or 2 things. And for that, I'm always grateful to Cynthia Tayebwa. When I looked at both of them, Joel and Cynthia, they had stories to tell. I'm not doing well up to today. I'm not doing that fine, but I was better than these 2 people. And their stories hit me hard. Cynthia was a female who wanted to develop her tennis sport, who wanted to become a coach in tennis. One day, play like Serena Williams. But because there are no resources, she has no rackets, they are not playing balls, there is no future. Our local tennis was falling apart. It was basically people play, but ask them where they are going. They are not seeing where they are going. Similarly, Joel had the same story. You see, we play here and we can't go for tournaments. The people who go for tournaments are selected, and when you get a chance, it is hard, you can't find money. So the story went on, but it was all miserable. And I was like, instead of being selfish and look at the investment, earning money out of it, couldn't I make a difference in this sport? I sat down at my place and I pledged that from that day I will start something that would help promote Ugandan lawn tennis, so that my friend Joel would be employed in tennis. Joel would have an opportunity of going abroad and play professional tennis, and Cynthia would have that opportunity of being a female coach in tennis. I can assure you, in Uganda, there are no female coaches I know except Cynthia Taiwo. Her dream was shattered because the club was struggling. It could not afford rent, and Royal Tennis was crushed. It now remained with the founder. Daniel is running the program under difficult circumstances. He has to walk to the families of the kids, look for simple playgrounds where he can actually continue with the hope that one day he will get support and help the kids. So I went around and started writing notes in my diary. They say, it is said that you can have the mind. The mind will always be thinking. But if you think and you don't document, your mind wanders in future. Your mind may change. So I made a decision to think for tennis. I made a decision that I will be part of tennis just to help my friends survive. And I started writing my ideas in my journal. This book you see here is a book that has all my tennis thoughts. It is recent that I'm transferring them into this diary. I'm now officially transferring my ideas from the old book and shaping them fully into where they are supposed to be. So I started thinking for tennis, and I realized that one of our biggest challenge we have in Uganda, most of the players don't have equipment. It's hard to get balls. A tin of balls that are 3 costs roughly $13 to $14. On average, most of us live on $5 a day. So if your life is that low, you can't even afford what to eat. It's very hard to avoid balls. It is very hard to buy a racket. Buying a used racket in Uganda, you have to wait for an expatriate to come play around, and he will give probably the coach or somebody of their choice a racket. Then you start running for it. You start begging. Uganda shillings. There are no courts. We don't have playing courts. There are no free community courts where you can go and play. So you just hang around the few courts that are available, and once there are no clients, who pay. That's when you get a time to challenge yourself, and you play in a court probably 8 people or 10. So I looked at all these challenges and I said, I can make a difference. If I put in effort, I can make a difference. If only I have the time, if only I have the right strategies to start looking for funds so that we can build more courts in our country, we can support our academies, open training grounds. A sport without funds is not a sport. In Uganda, we have very few tennis fans. People don't even understand how tennis works. To show my commitment that this is the right thing to do, this was the best thing to do, I went at home and made a decision to borrow money. I had a loan, a big loan that I'd secured to buy my private land where in future I would put my residence, where I would put a small house. And after taking that loan, I haven't even built a house because I cannot afford. Times are hard. Everything is around you. As you're planning this, you find challenges in life. You break down. You get an accident. So along the way, the journey has not been smooth. But I needed to make a commitment that I have to help my friend Joel and Cynthia to actually achieve their dream in tennis. And if I helped them, I saw the light that probably in future somebody would also help me and my life would also change. And that way, instead of being focused on investment, I focus on community service. Here I am, a creator on Real Turn projects. People ask me, what is Real Turn projects? And I tell them, these are so many projects that I have in mind that are going to help me fundraise so that tomorrow I have the resources that are needed to make a difference in our community. Once you fundraise, you have the funds that you need to put up courts in the districts around Kampala. You have the funds of creating tournaments, local tournaments, and our players have the opportunities to challenge themselves to develop much more better into competitive tennis. You need funds to run programs that can nurture and develop our sport if we are going to promote the sport. Real Turn Projects has a mission, and this mission is to ensure that I promote tennis in Uganda, grow the fan base, and introduce tennis to She. Every sport in Uganda is full of guys, it's full of men, boys, and we are leaving her behind. I have a passion for her. I have a passion that ladies can have an opportunity in tennis. We've seen professional players who are female, Vania King of Serving Up Hope. Her success came through tens. Serena Williams, Angelique Kerber, Sharapova. I know most of these players, they are female. And in Uganda, our female are struggling. It is hard to find a female player on court. The few are there just play for just. They just play to relax, enjoy. The few who are aspiring to be professional female players have nothing. They can't even afford a day's meal. They have no equipment. They have no shoes. They can't find free courts for them to practice, and yet they are students. So, Real Turn Projects is just a name I chose for my community initiative and future investments. But the mission is to promote lawn tennis beyond Kampala, our capital city, take it to other districts in the country, have many players get involved in the sport. In Uganda, we have close to 60, 75 districts. I'm not so sure. What I'm sure of is we have more than 60 districts in Uganda. And Kampala is just one of the 60. Just imagine a third of the 60 districts plus were playing tennis had community courts where the youth and the elderly would use those courts to play tennis. That means we can have more fans enjoying tennis. We can have more players. Even if we got 5 players from each district, that would grow the number of players that would offer competition in my country, Uganda. It doesn't help when you have players and there are no competitions. If I remember very well, we last had a competition, Uganda Opens, back then around 2013 or 14, not so sure, but around that time. We are in 2021, we've not had another Uganda Open. Does it mean that all Ugandans cannot support the sport? Does it mean that all our partners in overseas countries cannot support the sport? The future of all our tennis players in Uganda will be broadened. You can't be a coach when there are no people to coach. You can't enter tennis journalism when there are no fans to follow your articles. You can't officiate when there are no tournaments. Here is my dream, to grow the fan base and also ensure that the girl child, she is part of this sport, so she does not miss out on the opportunities that come with the sport. Anybody out there who can make a difference, please support. We need your support. Around 11th or 10th, around 11th, I think it was around 11th March, before we got into COVID issues, 2020, before lockdown, and I think we are still having joy in our country. I requested for a loan top-up. A loan top-up of about 17 million shillings. That's approximately $5,000. But I was sacrificing half my salary to pay back that loan. That installment you have to pay for the month, each month, is approximately half your salary. I don't earn much. Probably I earn like $800 or $900 as my salary. So when you take away that and you're supposed to live, it's challenging. It's really challenging in this current situation. But I made a commitment. I had a loan that existed that I'd borrowed to secure land for my residence. I think I'd serviced it for about 2 years. And now here I was, I needed money to start off my project, to show that commitment that I was going to support TENS. I approached my bank. They accepted my request and gave me the loan. Before spending even a single penny, I had to sit down and assess the main startup priority. So I went and secured a camera. This camera cost me approximately $1,500, which is about 5.6 million shillings, Uganda shillings. And the balance, which was about 11 something, coming to about 12 million shillings, I went and secured a 4x4 ML 270 with the aim of reaching out to those many districts as possible. At the time, I saw the priority was to start off. And how do you start off? There are so many strategies if you are going to run a community or any organization. But there are those key things that are important that can help start you off. And I thought a camera would help me start off. This camera would help me create memories for our TENS players. Something that is not existing, something that has not existed before. When you're aspiring to come and play or go abroad, one of the things anybody will be interested in is to have a video, to have seen you play, to believe that you're actually a player. My friend Joel did not have that. But from the time I got this camera, he has that opportunity. Jurua, Afiz, Wakoli, these are all my friends. They are friends to me, they are friends to Joel. And if they are going to aspire to play professional TENS, they need to create these memories. They need to know where they came from. And tomorrow they look back and say, we had to achieve something. And if Real Turn Projects is aiming at growing players and funds, and I felt I needed the camera to start off. And that's why you have Real Time Projects. So Real Time Projects is just one of those few projects that is aimed at looking for funds, so that one day I can actually be able to support TENS. So every fan there who supports TENS in Uganda, abroad, somebody who has love for the sport, you can subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you something. It is free, you don't pay. And it will be interesting that you can track the progress in Uganda. You can see, have some memories of people practicing, some memories of the few tournaments that we have in our country, and follow. The quality may not be the best because I'm still training. I don't have resources to go to cinematography lessons or trainings to learn how to do photography. I don't have expensive cameras that can do the job much better, but I know that in future everything will be possible. So the car is capable. Right now it is in bad shape. I need to replace tires, I need to work on it, and hopefully once I put up resources one day, it will be in good shape to help me start my journey to all the districts in Uganda. I think I've said enough about my journey of TENS, myself and Real Turn Projects.